My name is Gavin Evans, and this is my review of The Legend of Vox Machina, and this will be a spoiler-filled review, so if you haven't seen it, go and watch it, then come back and watch my review because I will be going in depth. If you know me, you know I love Last of Us Part 2. It's my favorite story ever. It is such an amazing video game, just so good. So I'm Legend of Vox Machina, Gavin, stay on track. Ashley Johnson and Laura Bailey are in Last of Us Part 2, and I guess they're like major fans of Dungeons and Dragons, and they have like this TV show or something, and they started a crowdfunding for this TV show because it's a passion project. So them and a bunch of their friends made this TV show, so that got me a bit curious. I'm like, you know what, I'll give it a try. And I have to say that it's fine. The characters are well defined, and they all have unique personalities that allow them to stand out. Like there's one character named Grog that looks like Drax from Guardians of the Galaxy, but he's this big strong guy, but he's clearly soft inside. He clearly cares for his friends. You've got another guy named Scanning Shortheart who I liked as a character who has like this walk and war attitude even though he lives in like the medieval ages. There's Keelys who I liked as a character, but my favorite character of them all is Percy. He is easily the most compelling character. Like, he has a clear motivation, he has a clear goal, and the way he goes on that quest is definitely the most interesting element of the show. Like, whenever he goes dark, and he puts that mask on and there's that black smoke, I'm just like, I get chills. I'm just like, oh man, he's like suddenly very menacing. Like, he goes from like the nerdy looking guy with the glasses to this evil guy willing to kill anyone with no hesitancy. And I'm just like, okay, this is an interesting character, and I liked where they take him later on in the show. The rest of the characters, it took me a while to like them, but by the end, I did start to care for them. Ashley Johnson's character, Pike, I think is her name, she's overpowered as hell in this one moment. Like, it looks like all the characters are going to die, there's no hope, and then she just comes in and just wipes out this entire army. I'm just like, okay, you're a bit too overpowered in this one moment. And her spiritual journey that she goes on in this season didn't work for me because I don't think they set the proper groundwork for her character. I didn't really know what was going on. It feels like a side quest, like a subplot that would have worked better in season 2 when she's already established. So that didn't really work for me. There was this plot to rescue Percy's sister, and after she's rescued, we still don't really get to know her at all. And there's these twists and turns or so. There's one moment where she dies and that lacked any impact, and then she comes back to life and that lacked any impact, and then there's one moment where she turns on her brother and that didn't have the impact they seeked. Like, for a character who has such importance for the story, I just wish they developed her better and that I actually knew who she was. The villains are very underdeveloped, they're overpowered as hell, and I just wish they had more to do. The voice cast is fine. The standouts to me were Sam Riegel and Taliesin Jaffe. They were definitely the standouts, and look, I love Ashley Johnson. I think she gives one of the greatest performances ever. Like, not just of video games, not just voice acting, but one of the greatest performances ever in Last of Us Part 2. She is a very talented actress, but when Pike was speaking, just the voice didn't quite match, and all I could hear was Ellie. And maybe that's just because I love Last of Us a bit too much, but I just wish she did something slightly different with her voice to give Pike a different personality. The animation is fine. It's nothing special. It's nothing revolutionary like Arcane, but for like the Saturday morning cartoons that I grew up with, like Justice League and Justice League Unlimited, it kind of reminds me of that. One big issue I have with this season is that there's no real introduction to these characters or this world. It just kind of starts. Like, we don't know anything about the characters at the start. We don't know how they met, who they are, and it just feels really rushed. Like, before the very first quest, I would have liked it if they spent some time developing them and their relationships. And that actually carries over to some of my other issues, is that the first 3 episodes of this show I thought were really bad. Like, episode 1 has this village destroyed, and it has no emotional weight. Episode 2 has this villain reveal that had no emotional weight. And then because of the way the first 2 episodes played off, I thought this was going to be an episodic series, but after episode 3, it becomes quite clear that this is serialized. They're trying to tell one story in this season. So you've got 2 episodic stories to begin the season off with, and then you get into the main story. And I just wish they spent the first 2 seasons. I don't need this whole dragon plotline. Spend that time with the characters, develop them so there's proper foundation for the show to move forward. But that said, as the show does progress, it does get better and better and better until it ends really strong with the final 2 episodes that I loved. And I liked lots of the fantasy elements that they brought into the story, whether it's some professor who can mind control people or the army of the dead, which I really loved. I like those elements of that. That said though, they do the mind control angle a bit too often in this first season, to the point where I'll say it became overdone and a bit predictable. And okay, there's one moment where there are these 2 people making out and one guy's just like, hey, why don't you get a room? And then it turns out one's a zombie eating the other person, and it's meant to be the shocking moment, but it was very predictable. Like, we just saw an army of zombies come to this town, so yeah, that kind of bothered me. But like I said, the last 2 episodes are really strong. Like, I was entertained for episodes 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, but the last 2 I really dug. And I'd rather have a show start off weak and get better as it goes along and end off strong than to start strong and get weak as it goes along. This is the preferred route, even though I would have preferred if it was strong all the way throughout. And I just thought the stuff going on, like, I started to care for the characters, and there's 2 pairs of brother and sister fighting each other, and I was actually engaged by that, and you just feel the stakes and the tension. And then for them to take Percy and make him the villain for the last episode was the perfect direction to take this story. I thought it was compelling, engaging, and felt true to what's been set up until that point. Because throughout we've seen Percy embrace the darker side of him. We've understand why he's doing what he's doing, why he's on this quest and what his quest is, and how it affects him emotionally. And then for him to just be fully possessed by this demon that feeds off his hatred and rage, just everything about that storyline in the last episode really worked for me. I just think Percy being the villain for the last episode was the best and most brilliant move they could have done. It felt properly set up to. That said, him turning good again felt awfully easy. Like, all you had to do was shoot his hand. But by the end of this season, I really do feel like the characters came to their own. I do feel like I had an understanding of who all these people were. It took a while to get to that point, but they did get there eventually. One other issue I do have with this season though is the humor. The humor almost never landed with me. I didn't laugh almost at all. The one joke that did work for me is that there's one guy whose right hand is injured and a guy's got an axe and he's just like whack it off. And I'm not gonna say, but they make a very obvious joke there that works in 2 different ways that made me laugh. But like, I don't know, the crude and crass humor just felt really forced at an eventual point. Like, there's this one moment where this one guy is fighting another guy on the roof of a building, and then he has like the power to create some magic items, and he gives him the magic middle finger, and then he does the same thing 2 minutes later. And it's just like, you did it once, okay, but you do it twice, and it feels a bit juvenile in areas. That said, this season definitely has issues. For the first half of this season, I wasn't loving it. I forced myself to keep going, but I'm glad I did, because by the end, I do think this show started to find its footing. I wish it had a stronger foundation. I wish it started off better. But for what this show is and what it did become, it worked. I do think the characters have defined personalities that really allow them to stand out. I do think there's some compelling character moments in this season, and I like how it fully embraces its fantasy genre. And that, like I said, the last 2 episodes are really good. Like, really good. So for all those reasons, I'm going to go ahead and give The Legend of Vox Machina Season 1 a 6 out of 10. Okay, what did you think of The Legend of Vox Machina? Let me know in the comments down below. Make sure you like, make sure you comment, make sure you subscribe. Stay tuned for some more videos soon, and Gavin out.